Today we're diving into one of the biggest stories in science, the discovery of the cell. It's a journey that takes us from a simple piece of cork all the way to understanding the very definition of life. So let's kick things off with a question. Seems simple, right? But the answer to this question completely changed how we see the world. What's the one thing that connects every single living thing on this planet? For most of history, nobody had a clue. And the very first hint came from a drawing that looked something like this. This is what a scientist saw when he looked at a super thin slice of cork under a microscope way back in 1665. He saw this kind of honeycomb of tiny empty boxes. This was the start of everything. But here's the thing, that first glimpse, it was also a little bit of a mistake. The guy who saw these boxes gave them a name that stuck, but what he was looking at wasn't exactly what he thought it was. Our pioneer was an English scientist named Robert Hooke. Today, he's called the father of cytology, which is just the fancy word for the study of cells, all because of his incredible book, Microphagia. In it, he was the first person ever to use the word cell to describe what he saw, because they reminded him of the small rooms, the cells, where monks lived. And here's the twist. Hooke wasn't actually looking at life. He was looking at the ghost of it. See, cork comes from tree bark, which is dead plant tissue. So what he actually saw and drew were the tough, empty cell walls left behind. He saw the box, not the living thing that was supposed to be inside.
So it was going to take another scientist with a much more powerful microscope to take us from looking at these empty boxes to seeing the chaotic, vibrant world of actual living cells. And this is where Antoni van Leeuwenhoek comes crashing into the story. Just about a decade after Hooke, he looked at a single drop of rainwater and was blown away to see it was crawling with what he called wild animalcules, tiny little animals. We know them as bacteria now, the first living, free-swimming cells anyone had ever seen. He then discovered sperm, red blood cells. The guy basically opened up a whole new universe. So with all these discoveries piling up, we can finally ask, what is a cell? Well, here's the key. It's the smallest possible thing that can truly be called alive. Anything less than a full cell just can't make it on its own or do all the things we associate with life. Now, for the next 150 years or so, these were all just really cool observations. Scientists knew cells existed, but they hadn't put it all together. They hadn't realized the mind-blowing implication that everything alive is made of them. This is the story of how that huge idea finally came together. And check out how fast things moved once the ball got rolling. After an initial hint by a guy named Dutroquet, the idea just exploded in the late 1830s. In 1838, a botanist cracks the code for plants. Just 1 year later, a zoologist does the same for animals. And that very same year, they put their heads together and changed biology forever. And this is just a perfect example of how science works. You've got Matthias Schleiden looking at plant after plant and having this light bulb moment. They're all made of cells. At the exact same time, Theodor Schwann is studying animal parts and realizing the exact same thing. When they talked, they came up with the cell theory. All living things are made of cells, period. But their theory had a massive hole in it. Okay, so all life is made of cells. Great. But where do new cells come from? Schleiden and Schwann kind of thought they just crystallized out of thin air, an old idea called spontaneous generation. And on that point, they were totally wrong. So this next part of the story wasn't just about filling a gap in a theory. It was about taking down an idea that had been around for thousands of years. This notion that life could just poof into existence out of nothing. Then in 1855, a German doctor named Rudolf Virchow laid it all out with this simple, beautiful, and absolutely revolutionary idea. In Latin, omnis cellula e cellulae. All cells arise from pre-existing cells. No magic, no crystals. Life only comes from other life. Now, this wasn't a totally new fight. People had been questioning spontaneous generation for a long time. I mean, way back in 1668, Francisco Redi did this classic experiment with meat in jars. He showed that maggots didn't just appear from rotting meat. They came from eggs that flies laid on the meat. But the idea just wouldn't die, especially for microscopic stuff, until Louis Pasteur and his brilliant experiment in 1859. He boiled broth in this special swan neck flask to kill everything inside. The curved neck let air in but trapped dust and microbes. And what happened?
The broth stayed perfectly clear. As soon as he broke the neck and let that dust fall in, boom, life started growing. It was the final nail in the coffin for spontaneous generation and the ultimate proof for Virchow's idea. Okay, so with the history lesson down, let's jump to what we know today. We know all life comes from cells, and that all cells come from other cells. But man, the variety of those cells is just breathtaking. Here are the two main blueprints you'll see, the animal cell and the plant cell. And you can spot a big difference right away, right? That rigid, boxy outer layer on the plant cell is the cell wall. It's what gives plants their structure. And get this, that is the exact same structure Robert Hooke first saw in his piece of cork all those centuries ago. And even inside a single animal, the variety is incredible. A cell's shape tells you everything about its job. Those round, kind of donut-shaped red blood cells, they're perfect for squeezing through tiny blood vessels. And those super long branched nerve cells, they're built to send signals across your entire body. In biology, form always follows function. And just to give you a sense of scale, this number right here, that's the length of the smallest known cells, a type of bacteria called mycoplasma, 0.3 micrometers. To put that in perspective, you could line up about 300 of them across the width of one of your hairs. They are ridiculously small. So let's put it all together. This is the whole shebang, the modern cell principle, the foundation of all biology. 1, the cell is the basic building block of life. 2, all living things are made of them. 3, it's the smallest thing that can be called alive. And 4, cells only come from other cells. It's simple, powerful, and it explains, well, everything. But you knew this was coming, right? In science, for every perfect, beautiful rule, there's always something weird that doesn't quite fit, and the cell theory is no exception. Viruses are the big one. They can reproduce and evolve, which sounds a lot like being alive, but they aren't made of cells, not at all. They're basically just a bit of genetic code in a protein shell. Then you've got weird stuff like certain fungi that are basically one giant cell with tons of nuclei. And even our own red blood cells are strange. They're alive, but to do their job, they have to ditch their nucleus. Which leaves us with one last, really fun question to chew on. If the cell is the absolute fundamental unit of all life, then what in the world is a virus? Is it alive? Is it some weird thing in between? It's a question that shows that even after all this time, we're still exploring the fuzzy, exciting edge of what it means to be alive.